feedback is that you can hear yourself through your own microphone. That's a setting that's set up.
Was that a commanding voice, do you think?
Yes, your voice might be a little more, but no, it's
double light actually.
Right. You've got 2 lights. Right, let's do this.
Whakataka te ho ke te uru, whakataka te ho ke te tonga, kia ma kina, kia uta, kia ma taratara, ke tai, e hi ake ane te atakura, he te he huka, he ho u, te he Māori o rā. Let us affirm today that we as councillors will work together to serve the citizens of Selwyn District, to always use our gifts of understanding, courage, common sense, wisdom and integrity in all our discussions, dealings and decisions, so that we may solve problems effectively. May we always recognise each other's values and opinions, be fair-minded and ready to listen to each other's point of view. In our dealings with each other, let us always be open to the truth of others and ready to seek agreement, slow to take offence and always prepared to forgive. May we always work to enhance the well-being of the Selwyn District and its communities. Welcome. I think we've got 2 apologies today, Sam and Shane, so I can note those. Extraordinary business.
Nothing identified, Madam Chair.
Conflicts of interest.
Again, none raised with part of the meeting.
Can I please have someone move that the minutes of the hui held on the 17th of August a true and accurate record? Thank you. And the seconder, Rob, thank you. All those in favour? Moving on to my verbal report. Nothing too much from me at this point. I will further down the agenda obviously take a retrospective look back on the achievements that we have done. But I guess in mentioning our site visit this morning, which was hugely beneficial for me, and I'm sure others, to actually go out on site and see the greatness of size, I guess, and the huge benefit to the community that it will be. And I asked probably a fairly stupid question that everyone else knew the answer to, but it was when you look at that huge amount of land and this huge asset, I was considering about, you know, the business case and the future benefits, because when you look around, there's no one there, there's no one around. But obviously the foresight of purchasing that land 5 years ago, with the, you know, the actual future communities that are actually going to, you know, come out of the land, I guess, in the next 5-7 years. You know, we're kind of future-proofing that, so an amazing asset for the future communities. But obviously, it's not actually that far away from Crippleton Township. So great site visit. Good to once again see good practice with a health and safety induction on site before we started walking. Not a lot of activity or high risk activity going on at the moment, you know, mainly sort of planting, and but good again to see that good practice. So I think more from me. I can move that if I could have a second. Thank you, Murray. All those in favour? Over to you, Manager's report.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I'm going to pass the ball to Kelvin, who's the author of this month's Manager's report.
Good morning, everyone. I'll just cover the main points here. Audit and the annual report update. We're making good progress around preparation of the annual report. Auditors continue to signal they'll be on site on the 17th of October. So we'll just have to consider the sign-off process for those accounts, which is probably likely to be very late November, maybe early December. 3 Waters reform. Momentum is moving on this. The National Transition Unit has been around doing a roadshow with all councils. It was interesting and to see their work plan coming forward. We're starting to receive a number of data requests, and from a financial point of view, we've received one late last week, which is a little bit of concern being shown by other Canterbury councils, and we intend to be meeting with the National Transition Unit lead for commercials on Friday to discuss. Strangely, we're a little bit concerned that the request is a little bit brief. As this one will be setting our opening debt position, we want to make sure we've got that spot on moving forward. So they'll take the data from this request, which is due mid-October, which is sort of taking our 30 June position, and by 31 March 2023 they will have agreed the opening debt positions for us to move forward on. And just a final update in this report on new requirements around the pecuniary interest register, which is a new requirement which will kick off as of 20th of November, so it'll be in the next training room. And we're progressing with how we'll approach that, and appended to this report is a good guide to that, so there for your reading.
And Madam Chair, if I can just add a couple of comments as we went through the pre-election meetings with candidates a couple of months back, we did actually refer to the proposed changes to the Register of Interest, Register of Members' Pecuniary Interest, should I say, and the impact that that will have in respect to identification of information and declarations. Also in terms of the meeting schedule for the subcommittee, so obviously this is our last one for the current triennium. Council will adopt a meeting schedule on the 2nd of November. Highly likely that the dates for audit and risk will be either of 23 November or 7 or 14 December. And the question mark around that is for the reasons that Kelvin alluded to in terms of the readiness for signing off of the annual report. So more information to come on that. Thank you.
Any questions, comments on the manager's report?
I've got one, and sorry, it's going to be around the three waters with regards to the transitional unit. Have they come back and asked any information on development contributions other than the information that was circulated by our CEO a couple of weeks ago?
So
maybe 3 weeks ago?
Yeah, in that space, so through our internal team, we're looking at DevCon holdings, A, in terms of money we're holding, B, money that we're expecting to receive. Then we go as far as internal funded loans and how we convert those to external and all of those sort of things. So, yeah, fairly deep shopping list of information that we've got to provide, Deborah.
Just with regards to that, all councils have been asked to provide all of that information, or just some councils with regards to? So that information will go to the 4 entities. How are they going to work this information if they don't work alongside councils? So
there's a couple of questions, one which there is an answer to and one which there's not. The first one is yes, all councils have received the same request. With respect to the entities and how they're going to do that, obviously that will be the decision of those entities, and bearing in mind they're only at the stage of advertising for applications as Chief Executive at the moment, and those positions they intend to announce pre-Christmas and be in place towards the end of January, and then the interim Chief Executives will think about staffing their organisations and policies and processes. So I wouldn't imagine too much activity until probably around June, July of next year.
Are there any issues with achieving the timeline of that data request? When you say it's a huge shopping list, what does that look like from a resourcing?
One of the things, and Murray will give me the exact name of the fund, but central government is not available. What's it called? Transition. What's the name of the transition fund? The 544,000.
That's the transition fund. It's about 574,000. That's
really
all our internal costs.
So that we can apply that against our internal costs, number one. Or number two, where there are resourcing shortages, and there will be, we can
So I
source
know
others.
there's actually multiple requests over multiple subjects, and there's a significant number of working parties and requests. So we're having quite a close relationship with the NTD local transition lead. So all the councils, and in fact in the North Canterbury and Canterbury area, that's been handled. We're having meetings through the Canterbury Engineering Managers Forum with the local transition unit, but multiple requests on staffing, operations, stormwater, all from. So it's the head off to the DI at this stage. They are getting fairly well organised. They've got a fairly large and complex work plan. But a lot of this won't come together until the middle of next year as they gather the data and how they process it and use it.
I want to repeat comments I've made previously. The biggest concern that the sector have, not just this council, the sector have, is the demands on those staff who are required to provide information to respond to the transition unit requests. They are the same staff that we're depending on in operational and next delivery, and that's the real crossover. Murray started talking about that, and I'm sort of adding strength to his comments as well. That's our real issue.
Right, now the comments or questions on the manager's report. Before, could I please have a mover and a seconder? Thank you, Deborah, and seconder. Nicole, thank you. All those in favour? Right. Moving on to major projects.
Work is complete and lighting installed. We expect it to be complete and open to the public by December of this year. It will be delivered on time and on budget. The green space is a bit problematic at the present time. We're putting it out to tender in October, but the work on that will have to be dependent on the developers, because we can't produce a nice pristine area and then have them driving over it with trucks while they're building the retail area. So we're monitoring that. The town square, much the same problem there, where we've got projects on hold there while the developers build their buildings. We're doing the landscaping and what have you where we can, but we just have to wait until the buildings are, the structures are at least complete before we can actually get in there and finish off the town square. The infrastructure for the town square for the roading and car park, stage 2, that's finished. We've only got minor defects at the moment being currently rectified. It came in well under budget, something like $790,000, because it was well and truly overestimated by the QS. But that was a nice win for that one. Prebbleton Reserve, I think that's where you went today. And you'll notice that's on the front of there's a photo of that on the report, front of the report, showing it in its raw state. It's not very attractive, but if we monitor it as it progresses, it should be interesting reading. Both the, I've actually got slides on page 50, 51 and 52. They're the components of the work that's being done at the moment. Stage 1A, there was delays due to wet weather causing stormwater issues, but it's the whole thing is nearing completion at the present time, the stage 1A, so, and it'll be open to the public in November. Stage 1B, which is commenced, they are working well there. We did find a problem with, this is mainly the car park area. We did find that there was a problem which was undiagnosed at the time of tender, and we were required to put geogrid under the surface of the car park to maintain the integrity of the subbase. It's a lot to do with the high water table and the heavy rains we had. It actually completely changed all the dynamics. So it's better to spend $75,000 now on the geogrid than having to rip up the car park later on and relay it. And the changing rooms, which is being built in conjunction with stage 1B, that is progressing nicely. The contractors are on site and they've laid the foundation. The services are being put in September. There was a report to council just on stage 1B and the changing sheds, which we identified that it was going to cost more than what was originally estimated in the LTP, and it was approved on the meeting of the 22nd of June, the additional funds, and we expect that to not to be altered too much. Page 53, points 4 and 5. We've received all the critical elements that are required. It's 100% complete. We've the base of the clarifier and the floor is all laid with wall panels installed. Heavy rain in July has meant that the project will be delayed until 1 month, until January 2023. It was supposed to be December. We currently have $382,000 worth of variations on that contract, but staff have identified that there's $125,000 which have been assigned to this project but were not within the project scope. It was work that was decided to be done, and done by the contractor, which is Court, who is working on the site. So I've got a bit of work to do to actually pull those out to make sure that they're coded correctly and not just buried in the contract. So I'm working on that. The trunk sewer, Darfield, most of the pipe has been laid now, 98.9%. Only is left as laterals and the work around the pipe works associated with the pump stations. Darfield pump station has commenced, and site works at Kirwee will commence, has commenced this month. Completion dates are November and December respectively. We're still projecting that the final costs will be between 18.9 and 20.44. I believe it'll be 20.44, but we'll just wait and see what happens on that. Darfield water treatment plant upgrade, that's finished and it's due to be commissioned this month, so that's been a good project. The costs are $250,000 over budget, but that was due to the late inclusion of the chlorine, which was out of scope in the original tender. And last but not least, page 56, the reservoir and water treatment plant at Prebbleton. Initial design's complete. Detailed design is on hold, pending resolution of variations before we actually go to tender. But we are purchasing any of the long lead time items to make sure they're here and don't hold up the general commissioning of the plant. We have pushed out the finish time of this project to November 2023, which I think is prudent. Cost to date have been for the initial design, the drilling of the new deep bore, the construction commissioning of a temporary water treatment plant, and the connection of that temporary water treatment plant to the town's reticulation. The contract is yet to be awarded. In all of these contracts, and I haven't mentioned it as I was going through it, the risks to these projects have now, with COVID now being downgraded, if you like, the risks are all to do with resources of material supply chain issues, and more importantly, labour. There is not a lot of labour out there to do a lot of this work. and the contractors do struggle at times to actually get on site, and then you have weather problems on top of that. So we're just dealing with that on a case-by-case basis, but at this present stage, the contracts are all progressing well. Questions?
Thanks, Craig. I'm just going to take a punt at names. But Nicole, have you got a question? Wait, you are
Small
actually
box
Nicole.
microphone.
Yes, I am Nicole.
You are Nicole.
No, I'm managers. I'm managers, I think.
Oh, you're Jeff.
No, you're Jeff.
Jeff. Oh, Jeff.
Gosh, it's a bit loud. Just to clarify for that, Pines 4 and 5, with the extra amount that staff have identified, so staff have actually agreed to those works, not that the contractors have gone and done them. Yeah. Okay.
Yep, because the contract is there at the time, it was work that needed to be done, and there is just a bit of confusion over the coding.
No,
I only found that out after I put the report.
no, that's good. That just makes it clear to me. Thank you.
Jeff.
Can we go to page 54, please? That's the Darfield Trunk Sewer. And I just look at the figure of 1.6 million for the overall cost for a particular contract with the Darfield Trunk Sewer, and it's quite a substantial amount of money. And I just wonder, how did we miss it out? What were our checks and balances to realise that the contract actually didn't have all the hardware attached to it?
I can go and get you a formal explanation of that, but this contract was progressed rapidly because of the DIA was giving us $10.5 million, and it was deemed to be a good project. It was not costed correctly. When you actually went back and had a look at this, there was no fees, there was no contingencies. This was just a figure that was given to council. It evolved, if you like.
Yeah. So for future projects, that we actually do have a different system of how we're going to monitor the business case going forward with regards to.
In any project, there always must be a business case, and there are three components of it. You've got your fees, you've got your contingency, and you've got your actually construction costs. You must be satisfied with those, that we have covered all the points. But if you don't ask the question, you might not get the right answer.
Right. Okay. And I guess the other one that I want to ask is, sorry, it's to do with the Prebbleton. I've just got to find it.
Reservoir or
The reservoir and the upgrade.
Yeah.
We had a budget of 2.65 million. Now we've got an estimated 4.51 million.
Yep.
Okay, this is being paid out of development contributions, so this is not a cost to the ratepayer, because
Correct.
there's not a proportion of ratepayer costing coming into this. Just with regards to all the growth that has been planned, right? Do we actually have the right configuration for pipe sizes and pumping stations
Yes.
built in?
Yes.
So we are not in, say, 10 years' time having to upgrade them all again?
On the current projections, I'd say we won't have to, but who knows what in 10 years' time what the population will be. There is another project for Prebbleton, which is the Toswell Road water treatment plant upgrade, which is going on in tandem with it. So all the water systems within Prebbleton are being looked at to make sure they're fit for purpose for future
Okay.
growth.
And for security of supply, all of this information is being passed on to Department of Internal Affairs, so it's fed through to the entities. the information of how we're managing our water systems, our sewage.
Are we now talking about the NTU?
Yes, yeah.
That will eventually head that direction. So all our records surrounding waters and projections and forecasts will be going into the D's models and records.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, can I just note that by October this year, we have actually got to provide effectively a long-term plan calculation a year earlier than they would have even been prepared. So staff are going through quite a considerable amount of work refining estimates on two bases. One is our current thinking, and probably one being an unconstrained one from what we'd like to do over and above what we've got in our actual plan. It's a bit of a mission, but the timing of the whole reform is actually creating a fair bit of pressure. I just note on Privilton, as we've gone through that, with the private plan changes coming on, we've had to relook at some aspects of the design, but with private plan changes, it really makes master planning quite challenging. And be a growth-related cost and will be met by development. Waters.
All right.
Yeah.
At the time, and I think back to the decision on the Darfield Trunk Sewer, and Mr. Washington presented us with a staff view to not have this as the preferred project, and we made a clear governance decision to progress with that because that's what we felt fitted within it. The risk we took, of course, was no business case in time to do that correctly. But governance, from a governance perspective and from our community's perspective, we overrode that recommendation, as Mr. Washington, I think, brought it to us twice, in fact, actually, and we continued down the track that we've taken. So yes, there are cost overruns, and there are anomalies, but I still think, on balance, from a governance perspective, we made the decision that was right for our community. And if we wear some extra costs because of that, and we've missed a few things, that is the price that we and the community have paid for getting a facility in place that I think is future-proofing that community, and indeed all of Selwyn. And with the transfer across to the Three Waters Entity D, ultimately it won't matter.
Councillor Levin, thanks for that. A couple of things to note. One is that after the initial decision was made, we had a significant staff discussion around the size of the pipe, and we took it to the larger side because we believe that would actually future-proof the communities. And since then, the actual demand and request for development, and Bob will know this as well, is that exceeded demands, and even the building consents and the issues going on about it at the moment, way ahead of where we thought they would be. So in time, it'll be like the Eastern Selwyn Service Scheme. You'll look back and say, or the Selwyn Aquatic Centre, we'll look back and say, why did we have those discussions at the time?
I assume that future Audit and Risk Committee will do a PIR on the project as well. So, I mean, some of those things will come out, and we will find that the pressures we applied to staff possibly contributed to some of that, I suspect. So, yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I guess that kind of just reiterating a couple of your points, Murray, does come back to that good discipline of a really strong business case. And like the conversation we had on our site visit this morning around understanding what the benefits are, and actually understanding what the true benefits of that asset that we're about to build are in our business case. So then we can measure and monitor later whether those benefits have been realised. The other thing, the other conversation I had when walking around the track this morning was understanding the OPEX cost of those assets. So it's very easy to build it and understand the costs of building the asset, but do we understand what the true cost in year 1, year 5 of actually running it? So I was asking those questions this morning around, what are the major costs for the Privilton Park of, the lights, mowing lawns, what's the kind of understanding those costs. It's just thinking about those things and again, all in our business case around that good discipline. I feel that, and we'll get to that a bit later, but definitely getting there. I think we're getting better disciplines and we've got some really good in-house resource that are just lifting the quality of that. A couple of things from me with regards to the report. And it's a fairly good news story, isn't it? And I was very pleased to read, there's a comment, I'm not sure which project it was, but just that one bullet point that said, variations are below the available contingency. I thought, I don't think I've read that before.
Stuff for you.
I know, so I thought, wow, that's very nice to be able to read that. But the only thing I want to remind management of, and I know I have said this before, but just be careful around where there is large contingency being tapped into or variations. Be very careful about putting that bullet point in there that says supply issues or COVID or I think it was the Rolleston one around contingencies increasing from 10 to 15% because of volatile pricing. So as a governor, I would expect more. I'd almost expect, if it's that big, I'd almost expect like an addendum to not every quarter, or every month, but it would be, as a one-off going, actually, let me tell you a little bit more about that. I know I probably spent the first year saying there's too much information, but in a case like that where we have a bullet point and it is standing out, then give us another page, as a once-off and say, the reason why the contingency is because, the baseline contract was built on, materials of A, B, and C, and these three materials have each gone up by, you can tell I'm not a builder, but, they've each gone up by 20%. It was based on a workforce of this, and the workforce cost from when we did the baseline was this, it's now this, and it just gives us a little bit more information rather than a bullet point that says volatile pricing, because it's very easy just to keep repeating that bullet point. So just where we come across that, we can have a little bit more. My second thing and final thing, and it is quite minor, but I know that I worked with the team quite some time ago around the risk status, which is great. So we've got our risks and we've got our status and we've got the trends, which is, again, that's great. But I'm finding that when I'm reading this report over and over again, I'm not sure there's actually kind of a methodical thought going into the risks and then the overall project status, because sometimes if you're actually doing a kind of reconciliation between them, you go, okay, well, these ones are going medium and medium, it's all going up, but then your overall status is going down. So I don't want to create more work, but I think maybe what we could do is an action, and you might be able to get rid of that project status box, is actually just for each of your risks, maybe add another column and say whether it's time, cost, or quality. Yeah. And then you can actually get rid of that project status report. So but at the bottom, so you might be able to expand it, but for each of those risks, tell us whether it's going to be hitting time, cost, or quality.
Yeah.
And that'll actually also make you think, okay, I haven't got any quality risks in here, or I haven't got any, it just makes sure that we're not just repeating the same dashboard and the same information.
Well, I think you have to be careful with that approach, given they are summary risks, and the detailed risk reporting is where it's critical for the management piece of it. So the project status is a very good snapshot of where things are at, as opposed to having to then assess each of your issues and risks to work out where it's hitting. It could create more confusion than having the summary.
Well, then just make sure you do a reconciliation between the project status and the actual risk, because you're actually telling two different stories at the moment. So it might be that, I know that's a summary, it might be that, yes, the risks on the left are going one direction for cost, but the actual overall is going in a different direction. But you might say that is because there's a whole lot of other risks you haven't told us about. But I'll leave it to you to
and being mindful that a risk is classified as either low, medium, or high, or extreme. That's the status of the risk. The mitigations against those risks will bring it down, and because you've got a series of potentially high risks doesn't mean the project is going to be out of control.
Yeah, I guess I'm just, when I'm reconciling the risks on the left, which are cost related, and then I see that the trend cost is going in a different direction, it's potentially, I'll have a look at it, but just do that reconciliation between, or maybe it needs just a bullet point to clarify that one is a summary of the others. But that's it from, oh, Murray, did you have something else on the project?
Yeah, sorry to interject again, Lisa. I'm just thinking with that increase in contingency, and I might be erroneous in thinking this, but I think that might have come to a full council meeting and we discussed that and approved that at that, which you won't be unaware, or will be unaware of potentially if I've got the right end of the stick, David, and I can't specifically remember if it was related to that project. So I think we have seen some detail on that as a full council. And Lisa, and I may be wrong about this, I may have confused with another project, but yeah, apologies.
But does the project dashboard go to full council? No. Okay. And it's only going to be, I mean, for this particular reporting pack, there's actually probably only one project that needs a little bit more information for that particular.
I can find that out. That's cool.
I guess it's just keeping us honest from a management perspective, that you're not just putting up the same information each month, and just telling us a little bit more information where we need it, not every month and not for every project, but where there's a large contingency then. That's it from me. Oh, sorry.
One query, and this I guess it's a process issue, and it's to do with the Prebbleton Reserve extension, and I guess it's to do with the stormwater and the risk that we have with regards to the stormwater designs, and accountability. If we go and get a design from an engineering firm or a contracting firm, whatever, and it comes back and it's miscalculated, who actually has responsibility for it? Is it the same as a time frame issue where the remediation is under the developer, which is us in actual fact, but if it was a subdivision, it would be under the developer and actually placed in and then forward over to council. But because this is a council facility and we have hired the contractor, what's the process of accountability? Is it the same with regards to liability and design?
As far as I'm aware on this particular issue, that we're going back to the designer.
Okay.
And say what went wrong for a kick-off. You know, why is it not working?
Right.
And that's what the last bit of information I had from Phil.
Okay.
So,
okay. No, I just wondered how it worked. That was all. Given that we were the.
We always push back to see that where the liability will lie.
Okay. So we could the new council could expect a report with regards to that particular issue.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I've worked on certain projects where there has been, I guess, poor design that has then led into almost the project team or the delivery team, so the builder actually redesigning as they're building, and that ended up in kind of liability in courts and negotiation, and but it came back to, in the end, it came back to the designers not doing their role to what they needed to. And what then kicked in is that designer then has professional indemnity insurance, which then kicks in, but the liability is definitely on the designers, actually not us. Right, can I have someone move the major projects report? Thank you, Murray, and seconder, Deborah. Thank you. All those in favour? Right, agenda item number 9, members' reflections on committee's achievement. So I've made some notes, but I thought maybe I will listen first rather than give you my view. So just a good opportunity, I think, to look back. I guess I haven't been here obviously for the full 3 years, but been here for 2 and a bit years. But a good opportunity for us to look back and and kind of take recognition, give ourselves a pat on the back, I think, of some great mahi that has actually been done in that period of time. So does anyone want to kick us off with their thoughts or, and again, keeping it within the scope of the Audit and Risk Committee?
I'll start off.
Yeah.
I'd actually like to,
I'd actually like to congratulate the staff for the way that we have had the tables presented to us, both for health and safety and for our projects. The redesign of how we can actually understand them a lot clearer, especially visually. I think that's been really, really helpful. Sort of also what has been helpful is listening to those that have been on audit and risk for quite some time. So you don't have a whole new audit and risk, you actually have attrition of people. And just the knowledge base that they bring to audit and risk that you pick up sitting around the table, so through your succession planning. So I think going forward, succession planning on audit and risk is really very valuable with regards to picking up what questions to ask, what's gone on before. I think from a council perspective, because of the way that everyone's worked together, and we have done studies and looked at how we put our projects together, it's been a lot of work, but I think the learning curve that everyone's brought to the table has been very beneficial for not only us at council, but if we're on boards external to council, they might be not for profit, they may be for other boards, but just that general learning of what audit and risk is all around and all about. So I just like to thank you for putting up with me for the last 3 years on your audit and risk committee.
Well said. Murray.
Yeah, I won't say too much in Lisa because it's largely contained in what I'm going to say later, but I think the big thing that I haven't put in my final statement is that the absolute value I've had out of IOD, and I think a number of us have done courses, and certainly that I was privileged to go to nearly 18 months ago now, the IOD week-long course, and that was absolutely brilliant for me. It confirmed some things, but it also challenged me on others. And the biggest thing out of that, and I know speaking to others who have done it, was the network that you gained out of that and the different perspectives of governance that's outside of, as Deborah's just spoken about, outside of local government is really important. So I think whoever fulfills the role going forward here around this table would be my recommendation to really, and I know David's very strong in this, and it will be pushed, it's absolute to get people as quickly as possible onto those courses, because there's just so much benefit from it as well, and the use of our staff's knowledge. We've got some very talented and able people on our staff who certainly understand different aspects of audit and risk. So yeah, the other reflections I'll leave for later.
Yeah, to me, I think the biggest thing is actually the staff reports and things, so that someone like me can sit and look and follow some of them, because for a long time I hadn't been able to follow them, and actually it's made a huge difference to be able to follow them and to have everyone discussing it. The other thing is, after today and going where we've been, I think that what we've done today is really valuable, because when we look at the cost of these things, and you think of a football field or a paddock or whatever it is, or a piece of land, you really haven't got any concept on what's actually being done. And when the staff might come to us later on and say we need some more money because of such and such, you really have no idea of what they're talking about on the ground. So I think some of the biggest projects, I think that we should be looking at them earlier, but I do think that's been one of the two big things for me, is the staff reports and going and having a look at the things we're doing.
Thanks, Bob.
Say something. I have to second Deborah and Bob's comments about the reports. It's definitely made it a lot easier to read, and this really hats off to you, Annalisa, who's come in with a totally different perspective from outside and looking at what we're doing and being able to give your advice on how we can streamline what we're doing, and it's really appreciated that you've been doing that, and with you being chair now, so thank you.
Thanks, Nicole. I've got a shopping list. I used that term before, didn't I? So, I was kind of reflecting on this over the weekend, and I was trying to go back to my earlier papers, and I think, I said to David when we caught up that, Diligent is a fairly new tool for us, because I think in my first few hui, or even more than that, it was a big PDF file, wasn't it, that we were poor girls trying to manage those PDF files. So, and I do think the very first pack was several hundreds of pages. So I was kind of thinking what I'd got myself for. I spent a whole weekend reading. Oh God, there's a lot of information here. So I guess in summarising that, we've definitely moved to a space of quality over quantity. And I think that started with us really, and this is big thoughts to take forward to the, if there are any potential changes in the Audit and Risk Committee. But we went back and looked at their terms of reference. And I was kind of banging a drum going that the scope of this Audit and Risk Committee is very much is in the terms of reference. So we've refreshed that terms of reference to make sure that, what is our remit, what are our obligations or our responsibilities as governors of that subcommittee. And it was all around health and safety, risk management, internal controls, finance and investment. So if it's not in relation to any of those, then, it's a full council matter. We've had site visits, which again alluded to earlier has been highly valuable. We've established a internal management health and safety committee, the Mātou Hōtutanga Tima, the safety leadership team, which has been great. So I think I helped kind of with that terms of reference, and again giving us a level of confidence that management are working through that. I guess you've kind of all talked to the reporting, but I guess highlighting that, we've had the establishment of the investment report, the Treasury report, which is very comprehensive and of very good quality, health and safety, different roles, and the, I guess 2 or 3 roles that we've had in that have just keep taking that on, continuous improvement and uplifting the maturity of that. The finance report has definitely, had a new lease of life. And for me, personally, and again, this is my passion, but the project dashboard, from where we started, where every single project was being reported on different metrics and different variables, we've now got a really good project dashboard, and following on the PIR, so the post-investment review, which is very good. But, we're not becoming complacent. There's still there is still work to be done in that area. We still need to get better at business cases, and we still need to understand what our benefits are and that program portfolio approach. We've had really good updates from our subsidiaries and our investments. We also had 2 really strong appointments to the Orion board, which was great. I've got another page, sorry. So then just looking forward, I guess, and around that continuous improvement. So I think from where we came to where we are now, a lot of great work, but a lot of great work from management, It's been management that have done all this. And I guess congratulating management, not from just doing the mahi, but being receptive and open to challenge and change. And so I guess for me, looking forward, it is around that independent assurance, so getting that program of assurance and getting more kind of those independent reports coming to us. It's embedding risk management throughout the organisation. I know Calvin's done some great work in giving us that bow tie analysis of some of those top 10 risks, but I guess, looking forward, if there's support or roles in that area, then we might expect to get some more kind of breadth across the risks across the organisation. So that's it from me, but so just congratulate management and us as a committee to being open to change and continuous improvement. David, did you want to?
So, Madam Chair, firstly, thank you for the supportive comments that you and members have made towards management. There's certainly been a lot of effort has gone into the advancing of this committee, but on behalf of the management team, I also want to give a number of bouquets to members of the audit and risk team. And the thing that we've observed over the last 3 years is the growth of the committee and the growth of the members. And one thing that I always come back to is the bravery that you showed when you did the self-assessment. And everyone's, this hasn't been done before, but you didn't hesitate. You went through that exercise and you learned from that exercise. You identified a lot of things. You've acknowledged where our strength is, which is our financial side and our financial reporting. But equally, you very quickly honed in on those things that you want more information in, which was around health and safety and risk. And the conversations that we've had have enabled that to happen. Appreciate the comments about the quality of reporting, and in my mind, that has elevated the debate that we've been able to have. We've achieved a huge amount, and what we need to remind ourselves of is this has been two of the most difficult years, for reasons beyond our control. We're a high growth council, we're under the pump anyway, we've got new legislation coming at us, resourcing issues, but we have achieved, and we've achieved politically and we've achieved at management and operational level. So thank you very much for that. Going forward, I want to echo Murray's comments about the benefit of IOD. We made a very conscious decision to join all of our elected members and key staff to IOD. Take advantage of that. You don't have to go to the week-long course. There's a lot of very good day courses, but it does help. And remember, we are a big business. We just think, we're the local council. We're not. We are the biggest business in town. Might not have the biggest number of staff or anything like that, but our balance sheet, we've got a net asset base of $2 billion. You can't get through the day without using one of our services. And you are the governors of that. So just anything that we can do on that. We've talked about business cases, and I think that's one of the things that's come out in conversation. And really pleased to hear the number of times that those of you around the table this morning have talked about business cases going forward and the need for those, and focusing not on the CapEx side of building whatever it is, but the OpEx side and how that will impact going forward. And that makes sure that we have detailed staff reports. And the final thing going forward is, it's an old thing from me, you've heard it many, many times before, and you'll probably hear it one or two times in the next few months, and that is continue to challenge the capacity to deliver. Because we're very good at saying yes, we the sector are very good at saying yes, but it's around delivery. And when you get through the situation that you're in at the moment, pre-election, it's great to be able to stand and say, re-elect me, because I've been a councillor in the last 3 years, and in this term we have done and fill in the dots, and make sure we do that by having an achievable list. But just in closing, Madam Chair, on behalf of the management and staff, thank you for your work, and also for the support that you've given to us to allow us to go forward from strength to strength. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Thanks, David. Future work plans, which kind of flows on from the previous item. How do we want to cover?
Well, if I could start by repeating a couple of the things that I said. What are the things that are crucial for us going forward, and it's to understand risk, it's to understand the need for a business case to be put in front of us for any project, looking at the impact, not what is the capital cost. We spend a lot of time focusing on capital cost and variation to that, and then we get to that once a year time where we set rates. Oh, where's our pressure? Well, it's because of the OPEX cost of certain things. And also, one thing I'd push very strongly on is a review of revenue and financing policy, or public versus private good, because there is a growing element of cross-subsidy from general rate, where we're not receiving the revenue under that policy. And finally, policy review is something that we are putting a lot more effort into and have done. And next one scheduled for whatever that late November, early December meeting is that I've referred to before.
Just with regards to the consideration of future work plans, it's very important, I think, that if we know we've got a project coming up in such year X, but we need to actually be do the groundwork of purchasing land prior to undertaking ground X, that we actually probably need to skill ourselves into how we manage that a little bit clearer with regards to coming up to the fact that we're in this year, the project's there, it's funded, that we need to purchase some land, we need to do this, we need to do that, you know. Whereas another project, we've incrementally, and I'll use the Leaston one for an example, is where we've actually gone out and pre-purchased land. We may not have needed it all, which gives us the option of selling it back later and recovering those costs. But I think if we can actually design models where we might want to deliver in, say, 25, 26, but we're actually planning, if an opportunity comes up, to purchase some land prior to that date. So it's extending the life of the project to actually know that you've got all the land available in that year that you actually want to start the project. Does that make sense to anybody? It's like what we did we've done it in Lincoln, right, with regards to purchasing property. We've done it in Leaston with regards to purchasing property. And I think strategically, if property does come up, we really need to probably make allowances to purchase that, knowing that it's going to a longer term project.
So one of the things that the new council will be focusing on is its strategy. What is our strategy for whatever the activities or operations might be going forward? It's incumbent on this subcommittee to clearly understand A, what that strategy is, and B, the pathway to deliver that strategy. And that complements what we're doing as an executive team at the moment, where our new executive team is putting significant focus on strategic vision for the future.
It sounds like it's a very valid point, but I'm trying to see it, how it links into audit and risk, because when I hear you, what I'm hearing is almost investment strategy and that linkage to projects. So it almost seems like it's an internal, I don't know if it's an internal steering, because you have had internal investment steering committees previously, haven't you? Because all those things you're talking about, you would think would be are being discussed within the leadership team around the delivery of their projects and their entire investment portfolio and that future looking.
Yeah, it's just so we can actually deliver projects within the 10-year LTP process. There's a real concern that if you get to the issue, you've got to deliver on a project, say, next year, 2023, 24, and it's sitting there, but it might need some land purchases that you haven't strategically gone out and got. The risk is that project then gets pushed out because, and then pushed out again. And as soon as you start pushing out projects from the 10-year planning project, you actually get it out of kilter. And that's a risk in itself with regards to cost, budgeting. So that's the area that it comes back into. It's making sure that you're not time pressured to deliver something where you've got a lead in and you've got an opportunity for a lead in. You use it as a contingency that's what that project's going to cost. So it's just giving that lead in time to a particular project. If something comes up and it is available, let's purchase it now. But when you actually put that in your 10-year plan, build that contingency into your costings in your 10-year plan. So it's not a surprise and you just say, oh, we can't do that because it's not in our 10-year plan. So it comes back to the business case or how we're going to plan for the future. And that's one thing I've noticed that we probably need to actually put more emphasis on our business cases going forward. So we actually have the right amount of funds in our LTP. Make sense now? Hopefully.
Yep.
I think how you could address that as this committee is to have some focus on the planning frameworks which we use and how they're approached, and also how we report on performance. Deborah's spot on in the fact that these things need to be planned out in the future, and we are doing that, but it's being a little bit more probably overt in what we are doing, so you're clear that these things are being done and taken care of.
Okay.
So I guess just in summarising, I mean, the actual work plan for the Audit and Risk Committee will always tie back to the terms of reference. So I guess once, we'll get the timing of the first meeting of the new Audit and Risk Committee, even if it looks exactly the same. But, I think there's a 2 yearly that we're meant to be looking at that terms of reference. So we always start, this annually, right? So we start with the terms of reference and then we'll make sure that which I think Calvin developed for us probably about 12 months ago now, which was it was almost the columns with when we're going to be reporting on what. Any other comments on future plans? Move it and
Right.
that's it. So draft resolution to move into
Sorry, can I just ask a question?
Right,
It's got tab 12 being valedictorians
Yeah,
of leaving.
we're just coming to that. We're doing that at the end of the meeting. So we're going to go into committee and then we're going to come out of committee and finish with valedictories
Okay.
and then close.
So it's definitely not in PX. I mean, are we saying to
That
everyone, we don't want to hear what Murray's saying?
Valedictories are definitely not PX.
That is valid.
So you want a resolution to move into PX? I'll move.
Thank you.
Nicole second. All in favour say aye. Carried. Bang.
You might move.